Assalamu alaikum, shalom aleichem, Eid Mubارك, Shana Tova. This is the second day of Rosh Hashanah and the first day of the month of Shawwal, the lunar month of Shawwal, Eid, following the lunar month of Ramadan. I am sitting here on the elliptical trainer, not really sitting, but I do a lot of my online reading while I'm getting a little light exercise on here, oftentimes in the morning. And something caught my eye from Reza Soltani, from Muslim Debates, and I doubt you can see it too well here, but I'm going to read it to you. And my visuals on here, as you've noticed, usually aren't super significant. He says, we Muslims need to tear a few pages and brutal passages out of the Qur'aan, symbolically at least, by rejecting literal adherence to certain problematic verses. And then he gives a link to, presumably, such verses or ayat. This is, if you're coming back and looking at this video, months from now, years from now, who knows, you might not be aware of the controversy that's been going on right now. There's really been two big controversies, and they are somewhat interrelated. One is the quote-unquote building of a mosque or masjid near the site of quote-unquote Ground Zero, the 9/11 site in New York City, in Manhattan. Some people say this is on Ground Zero. Some people say it's a couple blocks from Ground Zero. Some people say it is Ground Zero, but the building itself was hit with debris from the plane, and this reduced the value of the building. And I don't really know or care too much about that, but that's a little bit of context. That created quite the stir several months, 6-7 months after it was first mentioned on things like Fox News, and nobody batted an eye, nobody really cared. And then some political opportunists in the Tea Party realized that they could capitalize on this as a scare tactic. And I somewhat dislike the term Islamophobic, because I think that it's sometimes misused. But it really did bring to the surface, real Islamophobia, real paranoia about Muslims in the United States that hadn't really reared its head for a while. I guess we did see glimpses of that during the presidential campaign, and Obama's a Muslim and all this and that, and where's the birth certificate, etc. But anyway, so in response to all of that going on, there was a church which just announced yesterday it's not going through with this, but they were saying, they had like a dozen or so members, and they were saying, look, we're going to burn a big bonfire of the Qur'an, which is, that's fine, really. Muslims should have been, happy. This is, one, it's bringing things to a head, showing that there are genuinely anti-Muslim, Islamophobic nutcases out there. So it did bring that to the surface. But it also provided an opportunity for a show of solidarity with Muslims, as did the 9/11 masjid or whatever, Islamic Center. And that's a whole other issue that's really kind of boring, to be honest. But there are different parties involved with that, I believe 8 investors, and now Donald Trump's trying to get in on it to, move it to another location. But, this is why we hear from some people it's a masjid, some people it's an Islamic center, because there are different investors who have different ideas about it. Some investors are very progressive, some are emanating from Saudi. And indeed, some of the Saudi sources of backing for this are the same Saudi sources of backing for Fox News, as the Daily Show humorously and tragically pointed out. But this is really just to give some background. So Reza's saying in Muslim debates, he's saying, look, we need to tear out, at least symbolically, some of these brutal passages and pages from the Quran. Well, why is this so problematic for Muslims? I mean, if you heard Christians say something like this, we need to symbolically reject some of the brutal passages in the Bible from the Bronze Age. I don't think you would hear that many cries of protest. Certainly, this is a common thing amongst Jews to say that, look, some of these attitudes and things like that just simply aren't relevant today. They were relevant in the context. And this is in part because for most of Jewry, Judaism is about critical thinking. More and more, there are Christians and Muslims who are joining in the fun of exercising their brains and thinking critically, analytically, and applying reason above all else in determining what is religiously applicable. And of course, the Qur'an, Ayatul Kursi says that truth is manifest from falsehood. And of course, it says because of this, there is to be no compulsion in religious judgment in the deen. Truth is manifest from falsehood. So this shouldn't be a novel idea. But what Reza's saying here about rejecting parts of the Quran, this is very disturbing to most Muslims. Why? Because in spite of the way that the Quran was compiled and the fact that it is ordered not chronologically at all, but ordered in terms of length of the surahs, because the people who compiled the Vulgate simply had no idea what the chronological order was, which is something that we might find strange if we were to believe that this was compiled actually within the lifetime of Muhammad's companions or Sahaba, as the story goes. But I wanted to comment on a few things about this. One is that for the majority of Shia history, this has not been a revolutionary idea at all. This has been the standard until the rise of Usulitism in the past few centuries. The standard position, and there are a myriad of hadiths attesting to this in the Shia sources, is that the Quran that we have today, the Vulgate, the so-called Uthmani Vulgate, is a shadow of the original Quran. And that's my word, actually. They were much harsher. They said that it was not the actual Quran, that it had certainly passages from the actual Quran, but first and foremost that the Quran itself, and Sunni sources attest to this, Sunni ahadith, the Quran itself was written in a type of Kufic script. And I'm sure that most of you are familiar with Kufic script. Let's type that in. Kufic script. And let's see what comes up. Kufic script. So, oh, this is great. Wouldn't that be something? Look at that. That's an actual picture of some very, very old Kufic script without dots, as you can see. No dots. This was simply by chance, as one would say, that turned up. But what we see when we look at this Kufic script, now you see, dots emerging. People want to differentiate a little bit what the letters are. Arabic would be impossible to utilize as a written language without dots. So to say that the Quran was written in Kufic script without dots, that's saying a ta is the same as a ya, is the same as a ba, is the same as a tha, is the same. Like, it's unusable. You can't write a book like that. So let me show you something. There are a number of authors. There are a number of Quranic authors, or Quranic scholars rather, who have looked into the Aramaic origins of the Quran. Now, if we look at Aramaic, look at that. It looks very much like Kufic script without dots, doesn't it? Isn't that something? And Aramaic, this may come as a surprise to the listener, Aramaic was the lingua franca of the educated in Muhammad's day. If you were educated, which of course we're told Muhammad wasn't, because of this strange term ummi, if you were educated, then you spoke Aramaic. And it would thus not be surprising to find the Quran written in Aramaic. And it's not surprising to me to imagine Muhammad as being educated. It's another topic altogether. But the Quran makes prolific reference to the Talmud, which was barely a century old. It makes use of controversies in the Talmud. The Bavli Talmud mentioning Jewish culpability in the killing and crucifixion of Jesus, and the Quran absolutely rejects this. The Jerusalem Talmud, of course, makes no reference to this. I've never heard of this. The Bavli gives a very strange tale that doesn't fit with any source of Jesus' death. And it's clear that they're simply reacting to things that Christians were saying at the time. Basically, if this Jesus guy is like these Christians say, then sure, yeah, we probably did kill him if he's going around saying he's God. And of course, Muslims would have killed someone going around saying this. And they killed people for far less. The Abbasids, for instance, Al-Hallaj, and so on. The killing of Sufis. And, of course, Hussein, the son of Ali, and who was a grandson of Muhammad himself, was killed for daring to stand against the Umayyad dynasty. But I'm going off in too many directions, and I'm not really trying to do that. The point is, all of the Shia and Sunni sources agree that the original Quran was written in a type of script that very much resembles Aramaic. The scholarship, the modern scholarship on Islamic studies and Islamic origins, Quranic origins, indicates that the Quran is making use of Aramaic, and really points us to a conclusion that the form of writing in the Quran was originally a sort of Aramaeo-Arabic. We have Sunni sources attesting to the fact that the Quran was written in up to 7 different dialects, and most notably that the variants were burned by the compilers. And this is what I'm wanting to get back to. Not agreeing with Reza or disagreeing with him, but just let's think about this. There's this crazy man in Florida who wanted to burn the Quran. But really, we're told that the people who compiled the Quranic Vulgate, we're told this from Muslim sources, burned variations of the Quran, 6 different dialects, which it was said Muhammad orated in 6 other dialects, the Quran. Those were all rounded up and burned. So a huge cache of these have been found and are called the Sana manuscripts. We can deal with that at another time. But I wanted to bring this up after seeing his post, Reza's post, that the Quran burning isn't anything new, that it was something that first happened by the Caliphate, at the hands of the Caliphate. They were the first to have mass roundups and burning of the Quran. And this is something many people don't know. So when we talk about critically challenging something we read in the Quran today, we mean that we're critically challenging something as it appears to be in the Quran, as it appears in the Vulgate compiled from one dialect. Later, once the Arabic language was standardized, meanings were given to ambiguous words that weren't understood. Other variant readings, 6 different dialects, were discarded altogether, rather than used to compare and contrast interpretations. And all the while, the Ahlul Bayt, the Shia, maintained that the original Quran had been preserved long before that by Ali, and that it was not wanted by the Caliphate, that it was rejected, and that one day the original Quran would return with the coming of the Imam al-Mahdi, and that then people would have this understanding of the Quran from Ali. It's food for thought. Think even simply if the dots were gone, not just the vowels, if the dots were gone from the letters in the Quran, how many different interpretations could we have of each of those things in the Qur'an. So many.